So yeah, I was on live TV. This is that story. So here's how it all went down. On Friday, before the opening of The Adventures of Honey and Leon, the musical, while we were rehearsing before our invited dress rehearsal that night, the acting executive director of New York City Children's Theater comes to me and says, "Hey, we have this opportunity to have an interview on our local CBS 2 New York station, and we'd love for you to be the person they interview." And I was like, "Oh, wow, okay, let me think about it. Could you send me the details? I'm in the middle of this rehearsal right now." And so I sat with it and I thought through it and went through the rehearsal and went through the invited dress. Everything was going great. And I thought about it and I was like, you know what? I think I should do this. There's a lot of reasons to do it. I mean, obviously, one, to promote the show, to promote my work. Two, I thought it would be good practice because hopefully there will be more interviews in the future. And so I should get used to this process and practice it now. And then three, I get to be on TV. Now, I have been on local TV before here in the Bay Area. The difference being that that was a pre-recorded segment, so I knew that they could edit it if it went horribly wrong, and this was going to be live. So I was asked on Friday, and it was going to be a live interview on Monday morning on CBS 2 with the host Cindy Shu, who is kind of a local celebrity in the New York area, but I didn't necessarily know that because I don't live in the New York area. But anyway, so I said yes. And then they said that they would get back to me with possible questions that they might ask, etc., etc. And I was really, it was coinciding with the opening of Honey and Leon, and I was trying not to get nervous. I mean, I was getting nervous, obviously, but I was trying not to let the nerves get the best of me for both the opening as well as then having to prepare for this news interview. But it does start to dawn on me, in my head, I was like, well, it's just the local station, but it's the local NYC station. NYC is huge, so that started to dawn on me. And then when I finally saw the questions that they were going to ask, I realized that they were going to ask questions about the theater company. And I was essentially being asked not just to promote our show, but to also answer questions about New York City Children's Theater. So a lot of the weekend, once we opened on Saturday, I started to just memorize the company's mission statement. And there were some questions that I knew were going to be asked. And I pretty much just memorized the talking points that New York City Children's Theater gave me because I knew I had to. Any questions about Honey and Leon, I knew I could kind of wing it and come up with my own answers. But anything about the company, I wanted to make sure I got accurate and didn't screw them over with the wrong answer on live TV. And then I also scheduled a time with the marketing person at New York City Children's Theater to do a practice interview. So that was very helpful. I was able to kind of go through the questions and answer them and get feedback on them and feel like I was able to, go through it once before having to do it live. And then of course, Monday morning rolls around and I'm doing all my preparations and I'm on the subway and I'm practicing my answers even as I'm riding the subway. And then at some point I was like, you know what? I think I'm good. I've practiced enough and I just need to stay in the moment because if I get too attached to memorizing these things, then it won't feel natural. So there did come that point while I was on the subway. And then I get to the station and there's this big fancy desk and they say, "Who are you? Check in." And then somebody comes to get me and I'm walking down these long hallways in CBS 2 New York City. And then casually the person walking me to where we need to be is like, "Oh, and that's where Drew Barrymore films her show, and that's where John Oliver films his show." And I'm like, oh my gosh, of course. Oh, why wouldn't this also be the CBS studios for those shows? And so that was kind of cool. And then they bring me to this makeup room, which in the emails, CBS had said that I should arrive broadcast ready. So I knew I wasn't going to get any makeup attention as far as like actually doing stuff to my hair or my face. But that was my waiting area, my green room. So I sat in the makeup room and the makeup artist that was there was really wonderful. She chatted with me for pretty much the whole time, making me feel really kind of comfortable and distracting me from just like thinking too much about what was going to happen. And then finally somebody came by. Oh, and I was watching, the live footage as it was happening too, and that was like a weird mind thing because I'm so used to live TV happening on the TV and not right next door. But that was helping me see what was about to happen. I saw little clips as teasers of Honey and Leon. I took photos and tagged all of our cast members so they can know that that was happening right now. Then finally somebody brings me to the actual place where they film, which I don't know what I was expecting, but it's just funny because I've seen the morning show, the TV show, but when I get there and I see the setup of like the desk where they give the news, but then the kind of more comfortable couch area that I was going to be for the interview, but then on the other side how it's just nothing, wires, cameras, electronic stuff. And I'd work in theater, so I should know this, but it was just like, oh yeah, I guess this is a stage. This is all set up to look really nice for the TV. So that was fascinating. And then I just kind of waited off to the side until it was my turn. And when it was my turn, I got to the couch and sat down, and lovely Cindy Shu was just kind of chatting with me very quietly. But it's funny because I heard them call like 30 seconds, and in my head, when I hear 30 seconds, I'm like, okay, I should just stop because we only have 30 seconds. But she's so used to it. She's been doing this and she's professional. She was still kind of chatting a little bit up until 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 when she finally stopped and got camera ready. And that was, she's a pro. That was really cool to watch. And I was nervous. I was like, oh my gosh, they're calling 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Shouldn't we be? And we were ready. And then the interview happened in a blaze, as if, it was just so quick, and I'm so glad I practiced because the answers just spilled out, and I will add a link to that video if you want to watch the interview. But it just happened so quickly. I really enjoyed talking to Cindy, and then afterwards she did ask me another question once we were off camera again. But then as soon as I had gotten there, it was time for me to go. And I went back to the makeup room, got my bag that I had brought, and then was escorted out of the building and into the day in New York City. It just happened so quickly, the whole thing. And what was interesting was I didn't feel like opening weekend had ended for me until I finished that interview and I could finally breathe and take in the fact that it had happened, and yeah, that it was a flurry of events, and I was happy I did it, but I was happy it was over. And then, yeah, came a whole bunch of sharing that it had happened on social media. But that was my experience with being on live TV in New York City on CBS 2 with Cindy Shu. So like I said, a big part of that was I hope that's just practice for me. I want to, and I think I should be good at doing things like that. Doing interviews, being prepped, being ready for that. And honestly, that's a big part of why I do these vlogs. For me, it's practice. There's a lot of reasons, but one big reason for me is practice, that I get to, even though this isn't a big camera, I practice looking at the camera, I practice kind of talking off the cuff, and I know I edit these videos, but I do my best to keep it impromptu in the moment so that I'm ready to talk about my work if people start to ask me. I think it's just good to do for being able to talk about your stuff. Anyway, if you feel like watching that, I'll include the clip in the description below. I'll also include a link to the pre-recorded interview that I did for 4 Immigrants way back in 2017. But otherwise, I will see you in the next vlog.